Welcome back to the ministry, and we're on. It's got to be part 7, I believe, of the Breaking Dawn. But so she's pregnant. We discussed that. We've gone through Mary. We've gone through the understanding that you're gonna be potentially moving all over the place. The dual transition. So you may have to do an intense pressure cooker moment throughout your engagement process and throughout your courtship. But you may also be doing that immediately after you get married if you elope. Either way, this pressure cooker moment not going to be able to be avoided. Either way, you still going to have this. What may occur is if you just get engaged, you won't get pregnant during the time period of all of the chaos happening because of the fact that you're not being intimate with your spouse. Drawback to that, y'all both going to be frustrated with all the stuff that you're going to be doing simultaneously in an expediency while you're preparing this wedding thing. So there's going to be a push for this, and others may not agree to it, so on and so forth. Go back and watch my word that I did talking about the film Shotgun Wedding. I did a review of the trailer only of Shotgun Wedding. It took me about an hour. I talked about that in the Martin wedding, when Martin and Gina got married. And it talks about the process that you may have to go through in order to come into the fullness of your wedding, where the things are being pulled apart and all of that. But in Shotgun Wedding, it literally is they're under siege and are trying to get away from a entreatment of some militant thieves and stuff like that. So they end up in a major fight where they're fighting to get back to their family because the wife and the husband get kidnapped. So there may be a bit of confusion in that first season, and I guess the Lord's trying to prepare you that your next transition ain't gonna be as comfortable as you thought it was gonna be. You've been in such a rush to get there, and God's saying, you don't know what you asking for just yet. Cool your jets, cause y'all may be moving around, Mary and Joseph, because you're carrying God's promise. And if you're just in the engagement phase, you're carrying God's promise. But when you get married, it's going to be your baby. Okay? And the dual transformation means you're going to go through 2 processes of transitional rest. You're going to transition where you got a lot of judgment, a lot of things happening, a lot of movement, a lot of da-da-da-da during your courtship season. All of these things are also to try to test your ability to not get broken apart during this season. You got to focus on God and keep him in between y'all. Okay? Because if you do not, the stress could end up causing you to turn on each other instead of focusing on the goal. Okay? So you got to be prepared for that if you're just going into engagement season. 2, your marriage season is going to be a season of rest. That's where your secondary transition is going to happen of isolation, because you and him will finally be able to rest. Now, I say this because of the fact that, I repeat, the courtship, If you're courting, this may be happening during your courtship. But if you get married, meaning you elope, it's still going to look like y'all in courtship while you're preparing for the big wedding for the rest of the family. So either way, it's going to happen. It's just, if you elope first, you can enjoy yourselves and deal with your stresses together. If you don't, you're going to be dealing with sexual frustration also while dealing with all that other stuff. But once the big wedding happens, y'all can disappear, rest, and raise your family. At least for a season. While God is resetting y'all for what he wants y'all to do in that next. But it's going to be a secondary transition. But while we back in the film, Bella's resting at home. Jacob has found out about the baby, so Jacob found out that she was home and he came to visit her, and they blocked his ability to see her at first. Your God-ordained spouse is going to be very protective of you. Those that he trusts to have around him, meaning he don't have a good network of people that he can trust, but he does have a series of allies. The Lord showed me my God-ordained spouse's allies. Not specifically people, but amount. With that, they're going to be the ones that are going to be protective of you during this season. So he does have people he can reach out to, but it's a small knit group. With this pregnancy, Bella believes that she can be turned in the last moment. Some of your marriages or pregnancies, there is going to be a major shift that's going to occur at the last minute. How many of us have literally been in that 11th hour waiting for the miracle thing? This is what she believes in. That there can be a last minute shift. Next, she looks sick. Some of you, this process is going to either make you drained or him drained. But whatever's happening to the other person's going to affect the person that is not happening to. I'm not getting the direct warfare, but if you look at my face, you see these bags? You see these lines? You see this? I got a couple extra gray hairs. It ain't happening to me. But the effect is going to have an impact on both people. The stress is going to have an impact on both people. Pray. You know how they say when a woman gets pregnant, the husband also experiences the symptoms? If you and your God-ordained spouse are real tight like that, you ain't got no idea what kind of effect that's going to have on him. Okay? Follow me? He may be experiencing your symptoms too. Pray, because of the fact that you don't want to be laid out sick and him laid out sick too. Can't nobody do nothing if both of y'all laid out sick and you need his help because you're sick because you pregnant and then he's sick because he dealing with something. Pray. Jacob tries to talk her out of keeping the baby because Edward told Jacob to talk her out of it. Because He felt that she trusted him. Some of your God ordained spouses may try to talk you out of certain things that God's telling you is what needs to be done, because they're still dealing with spirits of fear and anxiety. Go back to the word that I talked about, Jacob, Samson, and Hercules. I talked about pain and panic. They're going to be dealing with pain and panic. They're going to be dealing with anxiety and fear. So you're going to have to be the level-headed one for some of this stuff that they're going to be going through, because this is going to be pain. They may actually literally be dealing with physical pain and anxiety that is also stemming from a level of panic and spiritual warfare that is occurring directed at them, because the enemy can't direct it at you, because you're spiritually covering and you got to cover them. And I'm going to bring this back up here because it actually happens later in the notes. But Bella is a shield for Edward. When she touched him, she clasped her hands with his and created a vision that he could only see. And that's when the rest of them said, "You're a shield." But she could only do it with her hand. It would shield their hands. And it created an electrical current that protected them. I don't know if you want me to say it. You are going to come into contact with your spouse. And in this contact, it's a shield. There's certain warfare that comes specifically against them. I think I mentioned this with Megan Michelle before. But Megan Michelle was talking about something that happened with her and her partner, that when she came into contact with him, every time they came into physical contact, she would get sick. So this may be vice versa, depending on how deep your spiritual walk is. Okay? So you have to be that shield, but you have to be able to not only shield them, but shield you too. Okay? I already talked about the wolf tribes and the fact that they are trying to come after the baby. Jacob goes back to the wolf pack and tells them, "You're going to end up with some unlikely allies," which Elisa Marie just did a video called "Unlikely Allies." Some who sided against you, feel convicted, and are secretly believing you. And I can't see the rest of the title. But they secretly are believing you. So they're going to turn on the old. Those that... Stephanie P did a video. She did a couple of videos that actually talked about the fact that your prayers have convicted some of the people that had turned on you. And because of certain spell work that was done against them, they are now able to see clearly that you were never the problem, but there was spiritual interference that was trying to make you look a certain way as the problem. But you know how the enemy do. The enemy gonna dump day trash on you and then point at you. "See, they did it. It was them. It was them. It was them." And you sitting up there like, "Lord, expose it, please." And then when God exposes it, it's like, "It was you." You know how you see in the movies, the person turns around, "It was you all along." No. Really? Vindication. This is your supernatural vindication. Edward starts doing research on the pregnancy and the possibility that the pregnancy may kill her. Some of you, because of the circumstance that you're going to be in, your God-ordained spouse is going to be highly concerned about the risks, especially if you're pregnant and they got to move you around. And in today's society, with all of these illnesses and stuff is being talked about in the atmosphere, and they're going to be even more concerned that if you are pregnant, keeping you in a state where you're not under high exposure to anything. Isolated. They do an examination on her, and they've come to find that the pregnancy is breaking her bones. I'm hearing Ezekiel 37. Can these dry bones live? But what's that got to do with this? Because it's a bone thing. This pregnancy looks like there is no way that this child could potentially live. Or if it does, she gonna die. Pretty much. So there may come a circumstance that's going to cause a decision, or your God-ordained spouse is going to need to make a executive decision as the spouse, meaning he needs to spiritually, and it's not so much the decision, it's the trust in God. Edward needed to trust that Bella knew what she was doing as it related to that pregnancy, because he had been fighting her the whole time. They end up in an argument again, and he's talking about, you're not even giving me options in relation to this situation. Some of you, there's certain things that God has given you spiritually to stand on, because he's given you the vision to see, which I'm going to mention this here. One of Bella's powers is, once she turns, is the ability to have vision. We are spiritual visionaries. We spiritually can see. We have open visions. We have the gift of biblical vision. God will pull you into visions. I don't want to call it a seer, because that sounds woo-woo. But yeah, we have that gift. So we know, because God's already shown us dreams, visions. It's not imprints, but we know the future which God has shown us. But understand this, get into it sometimes. There is a level of pressure. I remember when I was having phone issues with my other phone, the Lord told me before I had problems with it, you're going to get this, just before the warfare started. Some of you, there's going to be warfare. You got to stand in what God told you. I saw somebody's video which was titled, are you going to stand in what God told you? You got to stand in what God told you. Not what everybody else was saying. What God said. Okay? What God showed you. That's where your heart posture's got to remain. Don't get caught up in what everybody else was saying. That's what happened with Prophet Parham. She was making a point that when she was going through the ectopic situation, that you had the doctors telling her, oh, it's not a possibility. Then you had other family members that were also they actually had a little bit more faith than she did, because they were like, it's still a possibility. It's still a possibility. We got to pray on this. We got to do all this. So it's two levels of opinion, and you got to trust God, because the Lord told her something and she had to trust in that. But what he said was kind of vague, so it kind of left open the door for either side of the decision. And in this type of situation, Edward's kind of stuck in that middle ground place. I don't want to see my wife die. He can't even get happy about the child. He has yet to have gotten happy about the child. But he puts up with the situation because of the fact that she won't let it go. He has faith in her faith. In some of y'all situations, you're going to be the one that has faith in this situation. And because you stand in that faith, your spouse going to have faith in your faith. If that makes sense. Even if they don't have it, they have faith in you. And if you believe it, they going to believe it until it happens. Or they may need to be a Zacharias. Can't say nothing till a miracle is complete. But they have a moment. Her dad calls. God is going to be giving y'all wisdom, instructions, vision. And let me caveat here by saying this. A lot of you may be concerned about your spiritual openness when it comes to y'all getting married, because you can no longer fast once you're pregnant. You know that, right? It's not good for your pregnancy. But I've also heard that your spiritual sensitivity heightens like 15 times just because you're pregnant. So you may not need to fast. But in tune with that, your spiritual anointing may elevate, which may actually make your gifts more intense. Okay? So, she talks to her dad. Okay, that's what that was. Her and Edward are sitting on the couch. She's sitting on the couch and he's stooped below her. He does this often. Hold on. Let me talk about this for a second. Because the Lord is showing me every time he comes to her, he places himself at her feet. Your God ordained spouse is going to be one that he's going to, and God showed me this in a dream, not a person placing themselves at my feet. I was standing on a step and my husband was below me. Your God ordained spouse is going to be looking up to you, not putting you on a pedestal, but because of your spiritual status, he knows that he needs to bestow to you that spiritual realm. So he's going to not so much bow down to you, because God's the ultimate creator, but he's going to understand that you have a level of spiritualness he needs to gain from. Remember that Xerxes, even though Esther was supposed to be just the wife, Xerxes bestowed a level of respect to her that almost gave him that element of bowing to her. I just wanted to bring that in there because that was something I noticed about him. He always placed himself below her. If she's sitting on a chair, if she's sitting on a couch, he always stooped below her. He never stood over her. One, she makes this comment, marriage. And he makes the statement, they say your first year of marriage is always the hardest. Your warfare, testing, all of this is going to happen between that first year of marriage. Some of it is the courtship, some of it's the year of marriage, but y'all gonna go through your intensity of testing of your wills during that first year of marriage. And then you're going to step into that rest. Next, Edward hears. God is going to bestow your God ordained spouse with the ability to hear more clearly. You need to be praying about his spiritual ears. He could hear the baby's thoughts. Your husband's going to spiritually be able to hear more clearly. This is probably another reason why I've been feeling pains in relation to my ears. He's hearing God more clearly, and the enemy don't like that. So it's an attack against your spouse's ears. Follow. Pray for their ears. It's coming up upon the time of birthing. Some of you, whether it's you're being birthed into the wedding, you're going to be dealing with a level of pressure. Certain things are going to have to be kept under wraps, hidden, so on and so forth. The Lord showed me a celebrity's wedding in one of my dreams. And specifically about this celebrity, and this is something you see a lot of celebrities do, they didn't tell nobody that it was a wedding. They just invited them somewhere. And where they invited them, they didn't find out till the buses arrived at the location they were coming to a wedding. This is a form of protection for y'all. Y'all may not tell nobody that y'all having a wedding. Even when y'all decide to do the wedding. If you elope, y'all be married. But you still may not tell everybody when you desire to do the wedding that is a wedding. Just for the spiritual protection, because people be word cursing all the time. All the time. And things I don't tell people, because they mouth would kill it in its infancy. So you may not be able to tell nobody even that you're getting married. And you planned the wedding. You got to have that trusted group around you when you do your wedding. So there may need to be a distraction. Certain things happening on his side, there may need to be a level of diversion for this thing to transpire. Meaning certain things cannot be exposed. His people may have to create some type of a smoke screen, so on and so forth, to make sure that your wedding is concealed. And if y'all called to marry somebody of actual status, you know what happens when status people get married, right? They end up on ET, Access Hollywood, Extra, and everywhere else. Sierra and Russell Wilson got married, and how long did it take after that before they was talking about it on all the TV networks? Yes. So you got to have a level of discretion, because you got to be concerned about your family finding out and who needs to know in that. And then you got to be concerned about the world finding out before y'all ready to tell everybody. If you're called to something that impactful and influential. So she ends up breaking her back. Her body can no longer sustain the level of pressure of the baby, and she falls backwards while standing up, and it breaks her back. When that happens, you see her break her back and hit her knees. So there's going to be a shaking. Jesus, help me with this. It's going to be a shaking. Your labor or the pushing of this thing that God wants out is going to be a breaking of something. That's what it is. It's going to be a breaking of something. And when it breaks, it's going to create an intensity to get that thing out immediately. As soon as she broke her back and fell on her knees, Edwards ran to her to make sure that as she was falling over, she didn't hit her head. Okay? Your body, one, has to have the capacity to carry this thing and the ability to carry it with strength. Some people's pregnancies. I remember I knew a girl when I was in college. She got pregnant. She didn't get heavier. She got thinner first. There's a couple young women that I know of. I used to follow on YouTube. One of the young ladies, she got pregnant early on in her pregnancy. She couldn't hold nothing down. They had her on ginger all the time because she just couldn't eat. And they were concerned about the fact that she was losing weight. And she was already a skinny mini person. So, and there was a scene in the film that just before she went into labor, they showed that her body was bone. You see this bone right here? Thankfully, I don't have it all over the place, but I'm already skinny mini anyway. I barely got no weight on me anyway. Because I obediently consecrate when the Lord says so. But yeah, you have to be in prayer over that factor, because you got to be able to feed those kids. You got to be able to have what's in you that's going to be nourishing enough so that you can keep the nourishment in your body to sustain those babies and gain the weight. I'm praying that the Lord is like, Lord, I need to gain some weight. What we doing over here? I need some weight to carry the kids, don't I? Healthy weight.